Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. So glad to have back the former U.S. representative from Hawaii, and we're heard out in Hawaii every day in KHVH, and also former candidate for U.S. president. It's Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi, how are you?
Aloha from Hawaii, Joe. I'm actually in Hawaii right now. It's good to be talking to you, as always.
It's good to have you on. You know, I was told very early on in Hawaii, it's not Honolulu, it's Honolulu.
Very good.
It's a little bit faster. I think we on the mainland over here didn't realize that. Glad to talk to you today. I know how busy you are. First of all, every bit of video that you post is amazing, whether it's a workout video or you talking about freedom and liberty, or you breaking down what happened to you in 2020. Every single thing you do, if you're not consuming what Tulsi Gabbard is putting out, go follow her everywhere. And also check out her new podcast, Tulsi Gabbard Show. Just go to tulsigabbard.com. I want to jump into 2020 if you don't mind, because I think the first rigging of anything, and this is my word, not yours, of any election was the Democrat side when you scared the bejesus out of everybody who thought that they were a shoo-in. In that first debate, you stood there, held your ground, called people out on what they said, and you're the most Googled person like on the planet that night. And then there was an active move to stop you from getting any sort of visibility again, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Joe. And this issue really speaks to the threat to our democracy here in America. For me, in my own personal experience, you were right. I was the most searched candidate of the night, not only in the first debate, but I believe in the second, possibly the third. But in that first debate, most searched candidates, the outcome we were hoping for, we were prepared with our Google ad account, so that when people searched for my name to try to figure out, hey, who is Tulsi Gabbard? What is she about? Why is she running for president? That they would see the truth and the information that I actually was putting out versus whatever the Google bosses wanted to put out about me. But unfortunately, Google suspended our ad account so that did not happen, without any explanation and with no response to our many, many attempts to try to determine what the issue was and why the account was suspended. And then, of course, magically after that window closed, our account was reinstated and the suspension was lifted. To this day, we've never gotten any kind of explanation from Google about why that happened. And obviously at that very critical moment in the presidential Democratic primaries in 2020. And so the point here is not woe is me. The point here is that the power of these big social media and tech companies working hand in hand with the political establishment in Washington and working hand in hand with the mainstream media to determine who they want voters to be exposed to, who they want voters to hear from, and what messages they want them to hear. This is the real threat to our democracy, and we've seen this play out again most prominently with this cabal of powerful entities also working with the national security state. When we saw weeks before the election, the general election in 2020, how working hand in hand, these 51 senior intelligence officials working with the media, working with big tech, stopped the American voters from seeing what were the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop. What did it tell us about Joe Biden, and why was it important for voters to know this before the election? They saw it as a threat and abused their power in order to prevent the American people from knowing the truth. This is what stealing our democracy looks like, and this is the threat that we all need to be aware of as we head into yet another consequential election.
I want to talk about the 51 a little bit more in a second, but I want to go back to Google and them just suspending your ad account. The fact that you weren't included in some of the debates on the big stage because they made up some reason that you shouldn't be there. At the end of the day, were we, maybe this is too philosophical, but you seem to be somebody who would be willing to talk about this. Were we too naive as an American public to believe that Facebook was really about sharing pictures and Instagram was about that too? And, you know, if you go on that Twitter, that's kind of cool. You can say where you're going to go to dinner tonight, maybe post a picture of your food. It really turns out that they tricked us, in my opinion. They lured us in. They said, hey, Pags, bring your following. Gabbard, bring your following. And if you do, we'll verify you, and everybody will see everything that you post. When in reality, what they did was they took our following and don't show them anything. Or they take our following and then they hide us, or don't let us buy ads, or suspend us for saying hydroxychloroquine works. Tulsi, going in, were we too naive that we believed they're on face value what they were saying to us?
I think there was some hope of at least fairness.
Yeah.
I think that was really the thing is, hey, we know we're up against some of the most powerful forces in the country and the planet, but at least people like you and I will have the opportunity to make sure that our voice and our message is heard.
Right.
That has been proven now time and time again through the release of the Twitter files and other things to have not been the case. And the depths, I think, yet to be exposed is the depths of collusion between these big social media tech companies and those in power. And what is their goal? What is their objective? Their goal is to censor and silence anyone who dares to expose them, to challenge whatever their narrative or so-called truth of the day is that supports them either getting, maintaining, or growing their power and influence over the American people. The more they are able to control what information we see and get and what we are allowed to say, the more they are able to force compliance and to try to force us to conform and accept, again, there are so many examples of this, but so much of the so-called woke ideologies that they're pushing on us.
So well said. And by the way, if you haven't checked out our podcast, do so. The show's amazing. I talked to you about your tone and demeanor before. It's really, really very, very good with you on the other side of a microphone. It's very well spelled out, everything that you say, and I love what you're doing. Go to TulsiGabbard.com. You can go and check it out there. Also, she's a Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army Reserve. She's a former U.S. Rep, former candidate for president. Let me finish on your run for president by asking this. Why were they so afraid of you? And let me throw a couple of reasons out. Maybe you can tell me it's none of these things. But were you so well-versed on what you believed as a blue dog Democrat, somebody who was an old-school Democrat, or were they afraid that you would grab some people from the right side because you were telling the truth? You didn't really seem to care about the politics of it. What scared them about you?
Joe, I'd say is a few things. Number one, I had made very clear throughout my 8 years in Congress and in my campaign for the presidency that I was someone that they could not control. I think that was really at the heart of it. And when you look at the power, the stranglehold the military-industrial complex has on the permanent Washington establishment, you look at the stranglehold industries like Big Pharma has on permanent Washington. There are a number of others, but their power, their ability to maintain power is centered on their ability to control those who serve in these elected positions and in the unelected positions as well. And so they saw in me somebody that they could not control, somebody that could not be bought, and that was, driven by a desire truly to be of service to the American people in our country, work for the well-being and interest of the American people in our country, not for any specific industry or corporate power.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that scares them about people throughout the COVID pandemic who were speaking the truth and were immediately silenced and banned and censored. People who speak the truth about, the foreign policy decisions about war and peace that our leaders are making that directly counter our own national security interests. They are afraid of those who challenge their power. The truth challenges their power. A free people and a free society challenges their power. And that really is the takeaway here that I hope your listeners have is understanding that our God-given rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights are directly under attack, are under threat. What do we do about it? We must exercise our freedoms and lift our voices because there is nothing that terrifies those in power more than a free people who think for ourselves, who can make our own decisions and vote accordingly. Not just vote in lockstep, but vote accordingly. Vote who is committed to the Constitution, who is actually committed to being a courageous leader that acts in the best interest of the American people in our country. That's the change we need to see to ensure we are once again led by a government of, by, and for the people.
Again, we agree on all of that. TulsiGabbard.com. Go to the website. Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army Reserves, former U.S. Representative, and just a great host of our show. You'll see her on Fox all the time, all these other networks, and thank God we get access to you here as well. To the 51, we know that they were recruited It's now been said by this ex-CIA chief that the recruiter was Anthony Blinken. I don't know if you say Anthony or Antony. There's no H in there. Either way, but Blinken allegedly was the guy who was on Biden's campaign who allegedly put this letter together. He denies it. But then again, there are people who are in the know who say, no, he's the guy. The 51 haven't apologized. They haven't taken anything back that they said. They said, no, we just said it had the earmarks that it could be. No, that changed the election. When Biden had that ammunition the night before that debate with Trump, he was able to say 51 either current or former U.S. Intelligence chiefs or bosses say this is Russian disinformation. The American public believed that, and they weren't allowed to go see what was on Hunter Biden's laptop because that was being squelched and squashed by big tech. We know, Tulsi, that 10 to 15% of those who voted for Biden now say they might not have had they known about that laptop being real and not Russian disinformation. So what happens now? Does Blinken get impeached? Does anybody face the music on this? What should happen?
Antony Blinken should not. He is unfit. He is unfit and frankly dangerous to be serving as our country's Secretary of State, as our country's representative to the world. You look at the danger of and corruption in a guy like him who is so willing to weaponize the CIA, essentially weaponize the intelligence community to benefit Joe Biden in winning the presidency during a very critical time in that case. It was just weeks before the election, as you said, that this happened. And so willing to blatantly lie to the American people about it now, even as he sits in this, one of the highest offices in the country, as Secretary of State, blatantly saying, I did not have anything to do with that. When the deputy CIA chief has testified under oath before Congress that letter would not have happened if not for Antony Blinken calling him and instigating it. Now, did he use the words, write this letter or do the specific action? Only the two of them know that.
Right.
But the fact remains that, as you know, in Washington, what would happen? What would happen if one of the most senior confidants of likely the next Democratic president of this country calls somebody at a high level at the CIA and hints that, hey, maybe this is something that should be addressed. However it was communicated, there are very clear signals that people can read that would have instigated that kind of action, and very clearly it did. Again, Mike Morrell, testifying before Congress under oath that letter would not have occurred without Tony Blinken's phone call. And that says all that we need to know about the corruption of Tony Blinken and the Biden administration, their willingness to abuse and weaponize a critical entity in our national security policy, the intelligence community, for their own political benefit, essentially stealing our democracy away from the American people and stealing away our right to be able to have the information necessary to choose who deserves and who is fit to serve as our country's president and commander-in-chief. Tony Blinken is dangerous, and he's in a very powerful position and should not be allowed to continue there. People are saying, oh, he should go testify before Congress. Fine, testify before Congress, but this has gone beyond a fact-finding mission here. He needs to be removed from his position.
I couldn't agree more. But see, here's the thing. You've got Comer, you've got Jordan. I've had them both on. I love them. They're doing yeoman's work. They're trying their best. But we're yet to impeach anybody. Biden could have been impeached on Afghanistan alone. I think that you and I could probably have a discussion about that at some point. But when it comes to Blinken, this guy is not going to go to prison, the guy who testified that Blinken was the guy who put the letter together. He's not going to go to prison for Blinken or anybody else. He's telling the truth. At least I believe that he is. And then you've got this case now where you've got a whistleblower from the FBI saying the DOJ has a letter proving Joe Biden was taking bribes to set policy as vice president. Tulsi, why don't you think we've impeached Biden or Mayorkas, who's broken the border, or Blinken? It's like the Republicans' response is, well, we couldn't get it through the Senate. Screw it. Let the Senate say no and let them look bad about it. Because at this point, we've got to take some action to show the American people they're really being represented, no?
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Joe. I think that it's incumbent to it's an unfortunate excuse that's so often used in Washington is, well, we can't get it past the other side. That doesn't negate your responsibility to do your job and act as that oversight and accountable entity over the executive branch.
Right.
Otherwise, we're going to, if there is no accountability, then there's zero reason for us to believe that the Biden administration will stop their corrupt abuse of power.
TulsiGabbard.com. Go there and consume everything she does. She's an amazing American, also Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army Reserves. Last minute or so on this, Tulsi, you've been very loud about men competing against women in sports. I've had Riley Gaines on several times. She's an amazing young woman who, by the way, should be in dental school right now, should not be out fighting the fight, but she feels strong. Like her athletic career is over collegiately. She's fighting for those who come after her. We're seeing the best biker, the best female biker, weightlifter, bodybuilder, swimmer, marathon runner, they're all men. The best female, all of those categories I just said, and then some are all men. And then Bud Light is like what changed the tide in America. What makes me crazy is that, okay, they went after our beer, now we're mad. What should happen with this? It's a very simple biological question. Should men compete against women? The answer, of course, is no. But what should happen legislatively? What should happen in an uprising by the American people to make it so? This is stupid now.
Well, pay attention to the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party and Democratic leaders when questioned about this basic biological question, and their response is some version of, well, gosh, I mean, this is such a small number of people, like a fraction of a percent of so-called trans kids in school that this impacts. You know, people who are worked up about this are blowing it out of proportion. And yet at the same time, they have made it their top priority to cater to this, in their words, a very inconsequential number of people at the expense of all women
yes.
and girls who are directly impacted by this. So, you know, they are simultaneously trying to diminish the impact while yet making it a priority and not really focusing on the true consequence, which is the erasure of women and girls. So for those who are listening and maybe who haven't been paying attention to this because you don't have daughters or there's something that doesn't impact you personally, recognize that this is bigger than Title IX.
Yes.
The effect on women and girls and the erasure of us as a sex is happening right before our eyes. The bigger issue here is if they can do it to us, if they can completely deny the biological fact of a difference between males and females, then they can make up their own so-called truth and facts about anything under the sun, and then use the force of government in order to force us to accept that insanity. That is the bigger point here that we all need to understand, and why we all need to do our best in whatever way we can to stand up against this. This is about truth.
Yes.
And the existence of objective truth. If we allow them to get rid of that, the truth becomes whatever they say it is, and they've got the force of government to be able to ensure we comply with whatever that truth may be.
I'm old enough to have been around when Title IX happened, and I asked my gym teacher, what is Title IX? And it made sense to me that girls get the same opportunities as boys at publicly funded institutions. Yeah. I've got 5 daughters, so this is the hill I'll die on. I'm not going to stop this fight. I won't have anybody tell me I've got to call a man a woman, or I've got to accept that Shaquille O'Neal, if he feels like it, can go play in the WNBA. It doesn't make any sense. He's 7'1", 340. What is somebody going to do against that? He'll score 800 points a game. So this is the hill that I'm willing to die on, and I think a lot of Americans are as well. And I really appreciate your voice being loud behind this.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for continuing to be a voice for truth and sanity in these insane times. I appreciate you.
Doing the best I can. Keep your voice loud as well. TulsiGabbard.com. Check out her show. Also, make sure you see her on any of the social medias that she's on. What she's laying down every day is truly American and truly great. Tulsi, thanks. Appreciate you making the time. Thank you.
Great talking to you, Joe. Aloha.
Okay, aloha. We're back after this. Stay right here.